Hello, today I'm going to be talking about why I believe that President Trump should not go to war with Iran. Let's begin. Hello, I am a global nationalist. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the globe. Today I'm going to be talking about the country United States and the threat that President Trump has given to the country of Iran about attacking it if it does not agree to make a agreement with America on its nuclear weapons program. So in this, I want to explain why I believe that war with Iran is not in America's national interests and would be a bad idea for President Trump. I want to make a disclaimer. I am not an American citizen or an Iranian citizen. I'm not trying to interfere in the politics of these countries or get involved in any way in their affairs. I'm just giving my opinion. And without further ado, let's get started. US Donald Trump warned Iran that very bad things will happen if it fails to reach a nuclear deal after Tehran responded to a letter from the US president calling for talks. I'm quoting Trump. I sent them a letter just recently and I said, you have to make a decision, one way or the other. And we either have to talk and talk it out, or very bad things are going to happen to Iran. Trump told reporters in the Oval Office. I don't want that to happen. My big preference, and I don't say this through strength or weakness, my big preference is we work it out with Iran. But if we don't work it out, bad things are going to happen to Iran. On Saturday, Sky News Arabia published what it said was text of Trump's letter. And Trump, in the according to the report, Trump wrote that he would not sit by while the Iranians threatened the US and its allies. However, Trump reportedly wrote that he was willing to take significant steps to avoid an escalation, including lifting sanctions and opening the door to cooperation between the two countries. Previous reports have said that Trump's letter gave Iran a 2-month deadline for reaching a new nuclear deal. Trump, who in 2018 pulled the United States out of an agreement to relieve sanctions on Iran in return for curbs on its nuclear program, now says he is open to talks on a deal that could reduce the risk of military escalation. And this is how Iran has reacted. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has described the prospect of direct negotiations on its nuclear program with the United States as meaningless amid mounting tensions between the two countries. Araghchi's remarks came in a statement on Sunday after Trump said last month in a letter sent to Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei that he hoped there would be a negotiation between their countries aimed at preventing Tehran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Trump upped the ante last week, saying if they don't make a deal, there will be bombing. Arakchi questioned Washington's sincerity in calling for negotiations, saying on Sunday, if you want negotiations, then what is the point of threatening? Tehran, which maintains that it is not seeking a nuclear weapon, has so far rejected Washington's overtures, but has said it is open to indirect diplomacy, which a stance repeated by Arakchi in Sunday's statement. He said Iran wanted to negotiate on an equal footing with the US, describing it as a party that constantly threatens to resort to force in violation of the UN Charter and that expresses contradictory positions from its various officials. Western countries led by the US have for decades accused Iran of seeking to acquire nuclear weapons. In 2018, during his first term as president, Trump nixed the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, a deal between Iran and the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council that gave Iran sanctions relief in exchange for curbs in its nuclear program. Iran has since rolled back on its commitments under the agreement, amassing enough fissile material for multiple bombs, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, which carries out inspections of Iranian nuclear sites. Responding to Trump's threat of war, Hussein Salami, the head of Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, said on Saturday that the country was ready for war. We are not worried about war at all. We will not be the initiators of war, but we are ready for any war. Iranian parliamentary speaker has said that US bases will be struck if Trump attacks Iran. And he's in the region if Washington follows through on its warning of military consequences for Iran in the absence of a new nuclear deal. Trump argued that either in his letter that Iran can be handled either militarily or with a deal. And the parliamentary speaker Mohammad Kaibaf said that if the Americans attack the sanctity of Iran, the entire region will blow up like a spark in an ammunition dump. Their bases and those of their allies will not be safe. I think by allies they're referencing Israel particularly, and maybe Saudi Arabia and the other Arab countries that are US allies. Khamenei has called Trump's message deceptive, and Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also said similar. Not a party to this dispute, but it will cause problems for India if, uh, because the U.S. putting sanctions on Iran, and if there's war between the U.S. and Iran, it'll affect India's trade and connectivity strategy to make it more difficult for India to trade and with Iran, and India will be more dependent on the sea routes to Arab countries, and which will make it also more difficult for it to import Russian oil, not just Iranian oil. And there's countries that are supportive of Iran, like China. The US has sanctioned countries and companies that are importing oil from Iran, but that has not stopped the oil flow from Iran to China. The US sanctions have managed to disrupt trade as the number of non sanctioned tankers is steadily falling. Crude exports from Iran to China continue at a rate similar to those of the past few months. This is an old article from March, so I don't know how this is now in April. Traders and middlemen rearranged tanker flows and increased ship to ship transfers. These sanctions have created chaos in Iran's oil exports. However, Iranian exports to China, which buys around 90% of the Islamic Republic's oil, continue as traders and middlemen rearrange tanker flows and increase ship to ship transfers, especially offshore Malaysia, vessel tracking analysts say. The latest US sanctions have managed to disrupt trade as the number of non sanctioned tankers is steadily falling, but exports from Iran to China continue at a rate similar to those of the past few months, at least for now. China has been biggest beneficiary of Iranian oil still reaching the market. Most of Iranian oil has been shipped to China since 2018 when President Donald Trump reimposed sanctions after withdrawing the US from the so-called Iranian nuclear deal during his first term in office. And so if the US attacks Iran in a war, it'll hurt China's economy because they're dependent on getting oil from Iran. So whether they will intervene militarily, I doubt it, but they will take some diplomatic and economic actions. I'm quite confident of that. And it'll only worsen relations between China and the US. And Russia says US threats of military strikes against Iran are unacceptable. Russia said on Thursday that threats of military strikes against its ally Iran were unacceptable and warned that attacking the Islamic Republic could lead to potentially catastrophic results if nuclear installations were bombed. US President Donald Trump threatened Iran on Sunday with bombing and secondary tariffs if Tehran did not come to an agreement with Washington over its nuclear program. And the United States has moved additional warplanes into the region. Asked about Iran's nuclear program and the dangers in the current situation, Russia's foreign ministry said that Moscow has committed to finding solutions to Iran's nuclear program, which respected Tehran's right to peaceful nuclear energy. The use of military force by Iran's opponents in the context of the settlement is legal and acceptable. Threats from outside to bomb Iran's nuclear infrastructure facilities will inevitably lead to an irreversible global catastrophe. These threats are simply unacceptable. So what I think of this is that it would be dangerous for the US to go to war with Iran. I know that it is an ally of Israel, but that does not mean that the US should be always supporting Israel, should be getting involved in conflicts for Israel that does not suit uh, the US's national interests, and that they should work together when their national interests align, not when they don't. And a war between the US and Iran would be bad for the US. It would cause a lot of debt and destruction for them. Although they are likely to win, do think that America's military is stronger than Iran's, but Iran's military is powerful in its own right and can inflict heavy losses on the US. And there's no need for such losses and devastation. Uh, Trump is because he is a Zionist. He believes that the U.S. should be allied and supporting Israel, and also because he has uh, im- got a lot of support from American Jews and the Israeli lobby in the US. His government is being pressured and cajoled by Israel to act against Iran. I hope he can resist such pressure and that he himself stops thinking that is America has to serve and protect Israel all the time. And ultimately, I think that this alliance between the US and Israel does not help the US. It is better for them to be uh, separate countries and not allies, at least for the US. And because it gets the US involved in all these wars between the Middle East, because Israel gets them to do so through pressure and propaganda. And uh, yeah, uh, also, if the US bombs Iran's nuclear uh, sites, whether those are weapon sites or not, that radiation could spill into the sea, the Gulf of Aden and the Persian Gulf, which could, which would damage the sea and also which will affect the other countries and could cause great environmental harm and economic harm. So yeah, it's not a good idea. And I hope that he reconsiders it. And however, I doubt it, which is why I think Iran should be uh, trying to negotiate if they don't do negotiate directly because of the admittedly disrespectful way that Trump has uh, demanded negotiations with threats. They should continue to do so indirectly. Maybe get countries like Russia and China that are supportive of it to be a mediator, or a neutral country like India can be a mediator. Though I hope that India stays completely out of this. And yeah, it's if there's a war, it'll affect India negatively, which is why I don't want it to happen. And Yeah, I just hope that Iran doesn't do anything to provoke the US, which seems hell bent on getting into a war. But more importantly, it's the US that has to get off of this uh, route they're in, this anti-Iran policy. It's not going to help them or Israel or any other country. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. If you want to see videos about nationalism in countries outside South Asia, click here. If you want to see my previous video, click here. If you want to see the sources I used for this video, click the links in the description below. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.